What's up, guys? I'm ThatOneFurry, and I have something to say. The topic of this video today is going to be about separating art from artists and how that might be possible, the ways you would do it, and if people are capable of doing that. So I first want to start off by talking about harmful ideology. I've mentioned it in my past videos about harmful ideologies, what's worth supporting and what's worth calling out, what's worth cutting off, what's worth not supporting. And I'm not really going to go into that because we've already talked about that, but basically you would have people who have harmful ideologies, and you'd also have people who, irregardless of that, they will support them. So I'm going to go into that in a second, but I'm also going to talk about willing ignorance. People who see these things and they willfully ignore them just to support their faves. They think their faves are infallible, that they can do no wrong, and that it doesn't matter what they do as long as they make the arts, the music, the games, whatever medium it might be, they will continue to support it, which makes them complacent and ignorant. And again, the third point I wanted to make about this is the complacent support of problematic people. At what point do we draw the line? At what point is enough enough? At what point do you look at the behavior and you think, this is something I can no longer support? Or do you continue to put your head in the sand and we'll ignore this? And I especially want to talk about this because this is a problem I see a lot in the furry community. As a black furry, you have to deal with a lot of things, from fetishizing to racism to we have Nazis running around the fandom for some reason. I have no idea how that is, but I'm not gonna pretend like I don't know, because it's not easy. It's not hard to see how Nazi ideology wouldn't fit in with certain white people's beliefs. And at the end of the day, furries are still predominantly a white subculture. A group made up of subculture made up of predominantly white people, basically. And it's not hard to see how that can slip through the cracks and how that ideology can spill in, especially with how the way Nazis work and how they groom people and certain things like that. But let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is cutting people and artists off. At what point, like the melting point, basically. At what point is enough enough? You have certain people like Kanye West, who's said these disparaging remarks about black people. You've had the Pharrells and everything say the same thing. But on one hand, you have Kanye, who said, slavery is a choice. Black people chose to be enslaved, because I don't know what kind of ideology that is. He must have been sipping from the tea the Kardashians is brewing up and putting him in a sunken place, because even just going off of the basic word itself, slavery, it's not a choice. Slave, willingness to be a slave is not a thing. Unless you want to talk about BDSM culture or some shit like that. That's a whole nother subject, though, and we're not even talking about that. We're talking about, actually taking people from their homes and making them do manual labor for you forcefully. That's slavery, so therefore it can never be a choice. Moving on, cutting people off. At what point do you stop supporting them? Do you stop buying their stuff? Do you stop talking about them? Because, a lot of these people say these things and do these things because they want a reaction at one point. They just feel like the work that they're doing is not enough to garnish that support. So instead of getting fame, fame the right way of being a good person, being a good artist, they need infamy. So they will start saying these things and doing these things that they may or may not believe themselves. Some of them, most of them, I'm sure, actually believe these things, and it goes back to the conditioned thinking and unlearning societal norms and stuff like that. And that's a personal journey that these people have to take for themselves. And I'm all lost in my thoughts. But yeah, that's a personal journey people have to take for themselves, and they have to be willing to do that. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not willing to have a dialogue. You're not even deserving of a dialogue if you're not willing to change this behavior that so many people are calling out. And that goes into our next point about demanding change. There are some things that people say that you can accept, not accept, but basically it's not enough to the point where you would just immediately stop supporting them. You can say, okay, well, they fucked up here, but if they change the behavior, I will continue to support them. And that's demanding change. You know, like, you have to demand change from people, because if you don't demand change from people and you just continue supporting them as they do, they're not going to think that anything's wrong, that they're just going to think it's an individual grievance that people have with them, and they're not going to take it seriously. But once things start affecting their livelihood, once things start affecting their money, once things start affecting, their fame, that's when they'll start taking notice, and they'll at least be willing to examine their behavior. Who knows if it's, who knows if they're being real or not, but at least you will have some sort of starting point for that. And not a lot of people do that, especially with artists, because you have faves who make, the art that you want to fap to, and because of that, you're unwilling to call out when they do something wrong or something problematic, because you don't want to mess up that. You don't want to mess up your possible friendship, or you don't want to mess up your ability to be able to commission them, or you don't want to mess up just them doing work in general. And that's the same with music artists. You want your fave to be your fave no matter what, and you don't want to have to deal with, or you don't want to acknowledge the fact that they're not the perfect person you think in your head, that they're still human, which means they still make mistakes, and whether or not they learn from these mistakes or are willing to learn from mistakes are another question. But my next point is going to be faux rebranding and not owning up and taking responsibility for those things. So you have a lot of people who, when they are called out about certain things, they will try to deflect, they will try to change the subject. So you can be calling them out about their sexism, like especially men. You will call men about their sexism, and men will be like, okay, well, what about women? They're doing this, or what about women? They're doing that. But I was like, we're not talking about women right now, because that's not a systematic issue of men being oppressed by women. That's not a thing. Just like there's no systematic oppression of white people by other minorities. That's not a thing. So we're going to focus on what's factual and what's actually happening, and that's the systematic oppression of women by men. Like, you have, it's like certain things you just don't argue, because like there's statistics out there, there are facts, and we don't argue facts. That's my motto. We don't argue facts in 2018 and up, because I don't know, after the whole Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown thing, and these conversations started becoming a lot more prevalent in mainstream culture, a lot of people want to argue down facts as if their opinions or individual experiences outweigh these actual systematic systems. They're in place for a reason. You have to unlearn them. This is not something that you can say, well, my individual experience makes me the exception. I mean, yeah, it makes you the exception. It's like, yeah, you are the exception, but you're not the rule. The rule is that this is in place because of XYZ. Your exception doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But faux rebranding, in the sense that you'll have people who will be like, okay, I'm really sorry, I fucked up, I won't do it again, and then later on they'll do the exact same thing again over and over. You see this a lot with like YouTube people like PewDiePie's and Logan Paul's, who YouTube will continue to support because that's what's bringing in that money. So they're gonna fake the funk and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna make sure we punish them because we don't want to lose our money from you guys. We want that revenue. We want these millions and billions of views that happen daily. All this site traffic will give us lots of money because we have ads and everything. But we're gonna punish these small creators because we're gonna act like we're actually doing something. We have to make sure you're doing something, because if all these advertisers pull out, then we're nothing. We're just a video sharing platform, which is what it should be. But I'm not ever gonna knock people's hustle making money off of their videos, but I am gonna knock the people who are problematic while doing so, and at the expense of minorities, at the expense of the oppressed in general. I will never be okay with that. And then not owning up and taking responsibility, that's not necessarily deflection, but just not acknowledging that there's a problem to begin with. So you have people who, when you do go to them about certain things, I've actually had this with one of my own experiences. An artist I really like made a piece in which they are a non-black person of color, and they said the N-word in the piece. So I approached them and I'm like, hey, you're saying the N-word in the piece, and because they live out of the country, and I don't know how customs norms are there, but I'm telling them, be mindful of what you say and how you say it, because like, you're not black, so don't say the N-word, basically. And I get this kind of like passive aggressive response of, whatever, I'll say what I want type of thing. And it kind of went on and on and on, when it exposed their own anti-blackness and their own racism. And, that's the unwillingness to even acknowledge that there's a problem. Like, you go on the defensive when someone approaches you about something, and they don't even do it. They're not coming at you sideways. They're coming at you as a fan. They're coming at you as a supporter. But then you go around and do this, and it's like, that's where people, especially people like me, speaking for myself with this person and this experience, I stopped supporting them in general. I'm blocking them. I'm done with them. I don't want to see any mention of them. I'm removing them from my entire life, and I don't want anything to do with that. And that was the line for me. That was the line for me. This person being overtly racist when someone's approaching them about changing the problematic behavior that they saw. It doesn't even matter how long ago it was. If you're still holding these ideologies to these days, then you're going to see the same thing happen again and again, which is why when you have the PewDiePies and the Logan Pauls and all these other, the Chris Browns and everything, people approach them and they're just like, oh, I'm really sorry. Let me issue my fake ass apology because, I want to make sure my money is okay. I want to make sure that money and that revenue is okay. But, I don't really care about what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. Fuck you guys if you're offended. And that's the faux rebranding. Like, you're pretending like you're this changed new person, but then you turn around and do it all over again. But the last thing I want to talk about with this is talking and walking. And by that I mean doing what you say you're going to do, being able to be about it and not just talk about it. So you have people who say, oh, I'm going to change, I'm going to do things for the better, I'm going to improve, but then they're not walking. They're not being about what they say. They're going back and doing the same thing. And, that's still faux rebranding, but at the same time, it's lying to me, because you're saying you're going to do this, but you don't, and it's lying. So you're just all around dishonest. I'm sorry if you hear any background noise. I record these in a piano practice room, so you're going to hear music, basically. But, people don't talk and walk. How they say you can chew gum and walk. I want you to talk and walk. I want you to say you say that there's a problem, acknowledge that there's a problem, and then I need you to walk. I need you to commit to changing the behavior, because if you want my support as a fan, as a supporter, then I need you to change the problematic behavior so that way this stuff does not happen again. And if it does happen again and you are unaware of this, then you need to be open to being able to accept that what you said or how you said it or what you did and how you did it is problematic, and you need to commit to trying to change yourself for the better. But too many people are just unwilling to acknowledge this because they're comfortable in their problematic behavior, and challenging this behavior means challenging them. They perceive this as a challenge towards them, so they don't even want to think about it, they don't want to acknowledge it, they don't want to talk to you. And that's just my thing about separating art from the artist. I feel like you can separate art from the artist. There are some people where you can just ignore them and just support the art, but there are some people like the Kanye Wests, the Chris Browns, the R. Kellys, the Bill Cosbys. I don't know if you can separate art from artists with them. Maybe you can enjoy the past art from them, but in terms of supporting new projects from problematic people, I feel like if you see the problematic behavior and it's just completely unacceptable, and you continue to support them after this and they have not tried changing themselves in any way, then you are complacent in yourself and you are also part of the problem. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a fan, it doesn't matter if you're a supporter. If it's problematic and you are okay with it, then you're complacent. You're a piece of shit just like them. And that's how I feel about that. So, I feel like you can separate art from artists. You can support old projects because they might hold some type of special meaning to you. But new projects or just new things in general, if you support those and these people are unwilling to learn and they're not trying to listen from people who are telling them, I'm the group of people you've offended, and they're just unwilling to do that, then they're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit, and that's that on that. I don't really know what to say. But if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like, comment. I'd love to hear people's thoughts about if you can separate art from artists. Do you believe you can separate art from artists? And if so, how? What are your thoughts on, just if you are a furry, what are your thoughts on how we address this in the community. If you're not a furry, how you think we address this in society in general, especially with like music artists and stuff like that. But you know, if you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.